Ramie, Sactown Sports. Again, Keegan Murray will join us in 45 minutes. Had the interview with him yesterday at King's Media Day. Coming up in 45 minutes, and an hour from now, we'll be catching up with Mark Schlereth. But right now, we talk with NFL insider from The Athletic, our friend Jeff Howe. Jeff, as always, we appreciate your time, my man, on a Tuesday. Ian Rappaport over the weekend said the Niners are firmly committed to having Trey Lance be their future QB1. Is there anything in your estimation that Jimmy G can do about that?
I can't imagine. I mean, if he's absolutely lights out and like it gets to the point where he turns into like this Tom Brady-esque franchise quarterback, then sure, I guess you rethink the strategy. But I mean, they're still paying off the the Trey Lance trade next draft. So you have to be fully committed to Trey Lance. You have to see this thing through.
I'm not saying bail on the Trey Lance plan, Jeff, and whether it's Jimmy or anybody else, I would think you'd want to have a plan B with a guy who comes in with the question marks that Trey Lance had just on its own. And now you throw in the fact that he can't seem to stay healthy. He hasn't finished back-to-back games in the same season since 2019. Don't you think they have to have a plan B, especially while still in this Super Bowl window?
Absolutely. They're going to have a really good backup quarterback next year. And it would be surprising if it were Garoppolo. And I'm not saying I'm not reporting anything here, anything I've been told. It's just, read everything that, see how this situation plays out. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to envision a scenario where it would make sense for Garoppolo to return. So, you look at, let's say, a Jacoby Brissett, who has done a really good job at the start of the Browns season here. Get somebody, a veteran who, if Trey Lance is all of a sudden going to get hurt, if he struggles, whatever, you have somebody else that you can turn to who can run a functional version of the offense. Because, again, like you said, the injury factor now, it is a whole lot more real than it was, let's say, 2 weeks ago. Because last year and everything we know about the hand injury or the finger injury and how it kind of led to some mechanical issues that led to some arm fatigue, and now all of a sudden you've got this injury. Now, look, you can sit there and say that both of those were sort of fluky situations, hits the hand on a helmet, and all of a sudden, that thing goes awry, and then this time his ankle gets, caught underneath a defender, and that season's over. But, again, it's smart football. If you are the 49ers front office, you have to take everything into account here and say that because of what you've seen the last 2 seasons, there's a real probability that they could potentially deal with the situation again, and that's why you have to have a really good veteran backup.
Jeff Howe with us from The Athletic, talking NFL. Let's talk about the other part of that football game on Sunday. It was atrocious to watch, Jeff. But when you're watching Russell Wilson, is it too early to be concerned if you're Denver about the contract that you just handed to Wilson?
Yeah, if it looked this way at the end of the season, then I think you're probably in full-on panic mode. But right now, with a quarterback who has run a certain type of system for vast majority of his career, joining forces with a coordinator that he's never worked with, who has, even Aaron Rodgers' first season with Hackett, it got off to a slow start. So there are natural growing pains. I think everybody, and I was probably guilty of this to an extent too. You look at this roster and you could say that they were quote unquote a quarterback away. And then you bring in a guy of Russell Wilson's magnitude, and then you bring in an offensive mind or a really good play caller like Nathaniel Hackett. And it's like, oh my goodness, here they go. Ready-made defense, some really good skill position pieces in play. You got a good running back combination. This can't possibly go wrong, right? And then all of a sudden it has. They're in a fortunate spot where they're able to win a couple of games here out of the chute while not playing well at all. But yeah, I mean, it looks ugly. There's certainly some growing pains. Absolutely cause for concern. This doesn't look like a situation where they're all of a sudden going to snap their fingers and become a 30-point per game type of offense. But it's not panic time.
Since we're on the subject of whether or not it's panic time and we're in the AFC West, is it panic time for Raiders fans? And is it too early to start questioning if Josh McDaniels is the man for that job?
Yeah, that's a two-part question in my opinion, because panic time for a roster, they're not like, I didn't think they were necessarily contenders to win the AFC. They are certainly talented enough to get themselves back into the playoffs this season. And now 0-3, the likelihood of getting into the playoffs with that division, those those percentages have decreased substantially. It's going to be really hard to overcome an 0-3 start. I would not say it's too. I would not be panicking that all of a sudden this McDaniels hire is going to turn into a Broncos situation. I think, again, we've talked about it. He's in a completely different phase in his career. I really do think he's got the right plan in place. I think he is at a good headspace that he is going to be able to handle this. It's just, you have all those turnovers in week 1. You have a complete meltdown at the end of week 2. You start off way too slow, and then you couldn't finish drives at the end of week 3. And now you find yourself in a spot where, I know a lot's been made about the fact that they lost to 3 teams that didn't previously have a win, but they were 3 competent teams, and the Raiders had different issues in all 3 games. That's why they didn't win them.
Jeff Howe is with us here from the Athletic NFL Insider, Cattles Ramie, Sactown Sports. Jeff, Mac Jones goes down with a severe high ankle sprain. He's getting a second opinion, according to Mike Giardi of the NFL Network. There has been some reporting that Mac and the Patriots do not quite see eye to eye about how to handle this injury. Are tensions mounting between the second-year quarterback and the Patriots?
To my knowledge, no. But I think, they're continuing to evaluate the situation. And when you are seeking, further opinions, you can always sit there and try to spin it and make it sound like I don't know. To my knowledge, there's no tension or anything like that. But whenever you've got a player who is fully within their rights, the PA is going to back them in this situation. If you want to get a second or a third opinion, it happens all the time with players and teams across the league. If you want to get a second or third opinion, you could have somebody sit there from a wide scope and say, oh, well, it's because he didn't like the first opinion. That means he's not on board with the team's medical staff or such and such. But, it's within the player's rights to exhaust all avenues. And if it is, from my understanding, the timeline is still not firm. They still haven't come up with the plan of how long he's going to be out, or at least they're doing an incredible job of hiding it. But if it does look like, and I think it's safe to assume that he's not going to play this week, then why not try to seek out as many opinions, within reason, to try to find yourself the best course of recovery?
How much is Lamar Jackson going to get paid this offseason after what he's doing so far?
That price is going up. He's playing phenomenal. He's right now through 3 weeks. I think there's some good play from some other quarterbacks around the league. Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, but Lamar Jackson has to be the MVP through 3 weeks. And now all of a sudden you got a 2-time MVP. Let's say it carries out this way throughout the course of the season. Let's say he plays better in the playoffs than he has in previous years. Yeah, you're looking at 250 plus, and you're probably, there's a good chance that he's going 50 plus per year. But then you've got a Ravens front office that, whatever their ceiling is on that price tag, they have the leverage in the franchise tag. So it's just, that's why I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago. It's a fascinating situation because it's unique, and it's unique in so many different levels.
Yep.
There really aren't any player comps to Lamar Jackson. You've got 2 sides that have various leverage points. You've got a player who is totally willing to bet on himself more than any other quarterback since, Kirk Cousins several years ago. And then you throw into the part that Lamar Jackson is worlds more talented than Kirk Cousins, and he doesn't have an agent. So that has it's a fascinating situation. There are front offices across the league that are studying this situation, just monitoring how it's playing out, studying how everybody's handling it. It's just, because it's just so truly unique.
Great stuff, Jeff. Appreciate your time. Let's do it again next week, my friend.
Of course. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good week.
Thank you, bud. It goes Jeff Howe from the Athletic NFL Insider. And it is interesting to see that Jackson thing play out. I was saying during the summer, I was shocked that not a lot of people were seemingly talking about that. I felt like that was a story kind of flying under the radar. As we got closer to the season and Lamar was kind of hanging around the facility, it became a little bit more of a story, but it was really quiet during the summer. We were talking about Brady. We were talking about Russell Wilson. We were talking about Aaron Rodgers. All these other quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson. And there was Lamar, former MVP, not coming to an agreement with his team. And as Jeff just laid out, a lot of circumstances about that specific story makes it fascinating.
I love that dude, man. And not just a football player. I love Lamar Jackson, and I'm rooting hard for him that he keeps this going. And most of all, that he stays healthy and gets that payday, man, because he deserves it for the way that he carries that offense in every way, shape, and form. If anybody deserves the money right now, it's Lamar Jackson. I'm rooting hard for that guy.
Capital Casino is conveniently located on 411 North 16th Street in downtown Sacramento. Again, in just over 1/2 hour from now, Keegan Murray will join us. But coming up first is LeBron still getting his way in L.A.
Cattles and Ramie. Sactown Sports 1140.